which teams could realistically win the Super Bowl this upcoming NFL season. We're going to talk about it here today. Who has the opportunity to bring home the Lombardi to win the whole damn thing? We've got 12 teams on this list, and that's a lot. And I would say teams in tier 3 and tier 4, it really is going to take a lot to go right for these teams to actually get where they want to go this year. But I do think in tier 1 and tier 2, there are a lot of teams with legitimate opportunities. If you're talking about an AFC team making the Super Bowl, not named the Kansas City Chiefs, that's pretty difficult. It's going to be very difficult to win the AFC if you're a team not named the Chiefs. They're in tier 1 all by themselves. I'm going to not bury the lead there. But we will start with tier 4, then 3, then 2. You already know tier 1. It's the Chiefs by themselves. This has a team with the best quarterback in the league, best quarterback I've ever seen. Andy Reid, one of the best head coaches in the league, great offensive mind as well. Steve Spagnuolo, one of the best defensive coordinators we've ever seen. Talent littered throughout the roster. Hall of Famers, Pro Bowl caliber players. They added speed to the offense. The Chiefs are the preeminent favorite to win the Super Bowl for the 3rd straight year. And they should be. They absolutely deserve to be up there. So let's dive into this thing. Tier 4. I have 2 teams in tier 4, the Jaguars and the Browns. The Browns, unbelievable roster. No doubt about it. They dealt with some injuries last year. They battled through them and still made the playoffs. But I ultimately don't believe in Deshaun Watson. That's why they're in tier 4. If I'm wrong about Deshaun Watson, if he can play somewhere close to the Deshaun Watson you saw in Houston prior to everything that happened off the field, yeah, the Browns are a Super Bowl contender. Absolutely. Because that's one of the most complete rosters that we've seen over the last couple years in the NFL. Cleveland Browns, absolutely a contender. The Jaguars, my hometown team, the team I cover every day at training camp. Do I think they can win the Super Bowl this year? Again, same tier as the Browns. I wouldn't put it outside of the realm of possibilities. Like, there's teams like the Dolphins, the Cowboys, some other teams in that tier that I really think that they are too flawed to have a chance at winning the Super Bowl. Are the Jaguars too flawed? I don't think so. I think the defense with Ryan Nielsen and the talent they have at all 3 levels of that defense has a chance to be a really, really good unit. Like the Jaguars defense, even last year when Mike Caldwell wasn't getting the most out of them, before injuries really took over and the defense started falling apart, they were one of the better defenses in football. I think Ryan Nielsen will get even more out of that group, and they added talent in the offseason, in my opinion, on the defensive side of the football. Eric Armstead has a chance to be a big difference maker. And on the offensive side of the ball, the reasons I feel like you really do have to kind of scratch and claw here, no pun intended, for the Jaguars to potentially make the Super Bowl outside of having to go through the Chiefs and a bunch of other talented teams in the AFC. Offensive line has to be way better than it was last year, especially in the run blocking department. Mitch Morse is going to upgrade things. You hope Ezra Cleveland, fully healthy, upgrades things as well, but that's still an offensive line that has to be a lot better. The receivers have to be a lot better than they were last year. Yes, you dealt with Christian Kirk injury, Zay Jones injury, Calvin Ridley coming back from suspension, not really being the same guy consistently that you were hoping to see, not always being in the right place at the right time, not always getting his feet down in bounds, not always catching the football. So the Jaguars receiving core has to be better. With Gabe Davis, with Brian Thomas Jr., who's a rookie, they've got to be better than they were last year. And so there's a lot of factors in play. I also think that the play calling has to rapidly improve. There is some drama within the building right now about who should be calling plays, Press Taylor, Doug Peterson. So there's a lot that has to go right for the Jaguars. But I think if the offensive line is improved, if the receivers simply execute a little bit better, and if Ryan Nielsen does what I believe he will with that defensive unit, they could be a sneaky Super Bowl team. Just 2 years ago, Trevor Lawrence and this young Jags football team took the Chiefs to the brink. And without a Jamal Agnew fumble, who knows how that game turns out in the end. But the Jaguars, I think, have a chance to be very competitive this year. I think they also have a chance to miss out on the playoffs, just like the Browns, be one of those teams in the hunt at the end of the season that doesn't quite make it. But I think that's where the Jaguars are at. Tier 4. Tier 3, I think you're starting to get even more realistic, but you still have to really put some things together here. The New York Jets, it's all about health. Is Aaron Rodgers going to be fully healthy all year? You brought in a lot of veterans who have missed a lot of time due to injuries. I love that they brought in Olu Fashanu as an insurance policy for Tyron Williams, but you still got some questions to answer. I think the defense is going to be fantastic. Offensive line should be improved. Still questions to answer, though, for the New York Jets. Philadelphia Eagles, the biggest question for me is Nick Sirianni. I'm not a fan of how he carries himself. I'm not a fan of how he's handled situations the last couple years after he lost his top coordinators, from that magnificent run that they had a couple years ago, Jonathan Gannon and Shane Steichen. After losing those two guys, it was a bit of a mess last year down the stretch. And I think that you did bring in two very professional coordinators this year, which is why I'm giving them a chance, because with the skill position talent they have on offense, I know that they have some reshuffling, some retooling on the interior of the offensive line. I am a little concerned about the linebacker play. We'll see how it plays out, but I think the Eagles have a chance if things go right with the linebackers, if Vic Fangio's defense hits the way it should, if Saquon Barkley can be a real upgrade, and if Kellen Moore can stabilize the offense a little bit, yeah, they have a chance. I think that they do. The final team in Tier 3, Buffalo Bills, they have the second best quarterback in the league. This is a quarterback that is an unbelievable elevator for everyone around him. Very well coached football team, quarterback and offensive coordinator, kind of like mind meld. They work really well together. I think that from a defensive standpoint, their head coach is doing a fantastic job. He has for a very long time in Buffalo, even though he's kind of lost some hype. I think that the Buffalo Bills are a very well-coached team, a talented team, but they are relying on a lot of younger players, a lot of new players. They lost a lot of veterans last year, so there's changes within their lineup that they're going to have to say, yeah, this works, right? You lost both safeties. You lost a lot of talent on the offensive side of the ball with Stephon Diggs, with Mitch Morse. So there's some questions they have to answer. I think they have a good chance at answering those questions, but because there's so much youth, so much talent loss, I think that there's a chance that the Bills are just kind of on the outside looking in from a Super Bowl contending perspective. Not necessarily. I think they're going to be a playoff team. I think they're going to be the best team in their division. Them and the Jets, I think, are right up there. But it's going to be tough, in my opinion, for the Bills to really make a Super Bowl run. It's been tough for them to make a Super Bowl run the last few years, right? They haven't had the best luck in the playoffs. They haven't had the best performances in the playoffs. So I think it's going to be a little tough for them to make it to the Super Bowl, but I wouldn't put anything past Josh Allen, And Tier 2. This is where the bulk of the teams are that I really think have a real argument. Like I said, Jaguars, Browns, maybe. Jets, Eagles, Bills, maybe. Tier 2, you're really starting to cook with gas. I think the Bengals, Lou Anarumo, I think, has more talent on the defensive side of the ball. I think they fixed the safety room. They have some young players who have a chance to take a step forward on that side. They improved the offensive line. And if you have a healthy Joe Burrow with T. Higgins, with Jamar Chase, that's a recipe for success. It really is. And then the Houston Texans, I absolutely love their young core. They are well coached on both sides of the ball. They have talent throughout. A lot of people point to the cornerback position as a position of weakness. I don't see it that way. I think they made upgrades at the defensive line, the linebacker, and in the secondary. I think Kamari Lassiter is going to surprise a lot of people as a rookie out of Georgia playing opposite Derek Stingley. Baltimore Ravens, you add Derrick Henry to that offense, and I think that it could be devastating down the stretch for teams in the playoffs to try to deal with Lamar Jackson throwing the football around the yard, to Mark Andrews, to Zay Flowers, the rest of the guys they have up there, Isaiah Likely, and then also worry about Lamar running and Derrick Henry running. Yes, they're retooling the offensive line. That's something the Ravens are known to do. Yes, the defense is changing a little bit. Patrick Queen no longer there, but you still have Roquan Smith. You still have Kyle Hamilton. You still have a lot of talent all over that defense. So I think the Baltimore Ravens have a legitimate shot. Detroit Lions. This is a football team that took the 49ers to the brink. They beat the Chiefs in week 1 last year. They are going to be more competitive on the defensive front than they were last year. They have more talent in the secondary. I still think there are some questions at linebacker. I think there's feisty players that Dan Campbell loves, but are they good enough? We'll find out this year, but I think the Lions offense with Jared Goff and Ben Johnson somehow Ben Johnson still being there in Detroit as their offensive coordinator. Absolutely incredible. Still a very talented offensive line. I think Kevin Zeitler is actually an upgrade for them. You have Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jamison Williams. You have Jahmyr Gibbs out of the backfield, great receiver. Sam Laporta, great receiver. So I think that they have a chance. They absolutely do have a chance. The Green Bay Packers have a chance with Jordan Love, with Matt LaFleur being just an amazing head coach and offensive play caller, able to get the most out of every single player that he has on that offense. Talented offensive line, talented running back room, talented receivers. Defense with Jeff Hafley, I think he's going to be a lot more aggressive. He's going to allow those guys to pin their ears back, and they have a lot of talent on that side of the ball at all three levels. So I like the Packers. The 49ers, look, they've been the class of the NFC. For the last 5 years, they haven't always made the Super Bowl, but despite quarterback changes over the years and a lot of moving parts, Kyle Shanahan keeps that team going, and a lot of people kind of look at them as a team that's going to have their downfall every single year, but it never seems to happen. I think Brock Purdy is fantastic. I think he's underrated. I think he has the best skill position group in the league with McCaffrey, with Ayuk, who's still there at this point. Obviously, George Kittle, Deebo Samuel, you bring in Ricky Pearsall, Jawan Jennings is still there. They have just too much talent. They have Trent Williams as well. I think Dominic Pooney was a big upgrade on the offensive line. Brandon Staley, I think, is going to get more out of that defense in specific game plan type settings. I think he did a really good job of that with the Los Angeles Rams. I think there were moments with the Chargers where he showed off his defensive acumen, being able to shut down some big-time offenses. It didn't quite all come together for the Chargers with him as the head coach, but I think Brandon Staley getting back to what he does best, being a defensive coordinator, is actually going to be good for the 49ers. And so that's tier 2. And then tier 1, it's the Kansas City Chiefs, as I already mentioned. This football team is unbelievable. The infrastructure, offensive line. Yeah, you have questions at left tackle, but I think between Morris and the kid they bring in from BYU, you have a good chance to have a good answer at left tackle. You're looking pretty good everywhere else along the offensive line. You have Isaiah Pacheco, who causes an earthquake every time he takes a step out there. You have got Travis Kelce, Hollywood Brown, Xavier Worthy, guys with unbelievable speed now to complement Kelce, complement Rashee Rice. I love the defensive front with Chris Jones being the headliner there. Nick Bolton, one of the more underappreciated players in the game today at linebacker, and they have a couple other good linebackers there as well. And then you talk about replacing L'Jarius Sneed. Yes, you need to do that, but Trent McDuffie is one of the best corners in football. They've got good safety play as well. I think that the Kansas City Chiefs are, for good reason, the favorite to win the Super Bowl, and I absolutely have them winning the Super Bowl. I do think, though, if something happens with the Chiefs, every single one of these teams that we talked about has a chance to compete, but it really is the Chiefs' title to lose. I strongly believe that, with Patrick Mahomes at quarterback playing as well as we've seen any other quarterback play in NFL history. Really appreciate y'all tuning in. Drop your thoughts in the comment section below. I know all the Cowboys fans, well, y'all might be out on your football team this year, but Dolphins fans are not going to be happy after that Tua Tagovailoa extension, me leaving them out of the conversation here. But look, I think they're extremely limited with Tua Tagovailoa as the quarterback of that offense. I think when they play good football teams with good defenses, they struggle. You've seen that over the last couple of years. Until they prove that they can get healthy, that they can get right, that they can beat good football teams, I'm not believing in the Miami Dolphins. Sorry about it. But drop your thoughts in the comment section below. As I said, if you enjoy the content, please like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. Y'all have a good one.